Okay, so today on the Live on Form podcast, we are joined by Mona Nemmer, the Liverpool Football Club head of nutrition. Thank you for joining us. And how are you, Mona?
Thank you for having me. Lovely to meet you.
Splendid. So this is it's a relatively new position that you have in the grand scheme of things. So you served as a chef and a nutritionist for the Germany under-21 national team for about 4 years. You were appointed Liverpool's head of nutrition and joined the club from Bayern Munich in 2016, I believe. And Jurgen Klopp has been quoted saying that you were one of his most important signings. So I'm not going to make you go red or anything like that, but that's an incredible mantle and an incredible thing for a manager of a club to say. So, I mean, you know, how did he get into nutrition, and was the intention always to work with performance athletes or football clubs? Was there an interest there from your end?
Well, it's actually interesting because I'm probably not the most normal nutritionist in the world, if that makes sense. So my story began that I studied being a teacher for nutrition. So nutrition always played a massive role. I grew up in the countryside. My grandma had a farm. So there was always like a really natural connection towards the different seasons, how to grow things, take care about things, learn things, make jams out of like berries you find in the forest, like all these bits. So there has been a really, really natural bond together with that. And it was always amazing for me to gain knowledge and also to transfer knowledge. So I've really enjoyed this little period where I was teaching kids around nutrition and also connecting theory and practical things, I think. And there is hardly a better field around the nutrition where theory is the one thing, but actually how things end up on the plate is the other thing. And I think making that interesting, making that attractive, play with like flavors and colors and textures and all these things, it's just like incredible. It's more than just food intake.
And it is an interesting approach, and it's a little bizarre that it isn't an interesting approach, because this is just the fundamentals, right? You know, I guess a lot of the stuff you're talking about there is the kind of stuff you teach kids. You'd be talking about colors, you talk about seasons, you know, what's seasonal produce, you know, where's it came from. And I think anybody from kind of a farming background or a group in the countryside or anything like that was kind of privy to that anyways. And then you've carried this over, and it's remarkable because you've carried it over into professional sport. You've carried it into elitism in many respects, and trying to get and kind of squeeze that extra little bit of performance out of these elite level sports people. And it's this holistic approach. And I've read a few sort of things as to what you've stated and said, and obviously bits in your book about this, taking the theory into a practical application. And I know from my background and, you know, dealing with clients and nutrition and things like this, is that one of the most challenging aspects is that practical application, is that thing of, you know, you're dealing with people who probably can't cook. You're dealing with people who don't know how to source good quality food. You're dealing with people who think it is just a bunch of numbers. And it's, you know, you've just got to tick this box and that box, and you should eat more vegetables and blah, blah, blah. So that approach that you've brought to professional sport is incredible. So do you want to just tell us a little bit more about what that kind of role looks like and how it's evolved and how you've made it your own? Because you have a very different approach to anybody I've ever spoken to in this particular field of nutrition and professional sport.
Yeah, so it's actually very, very interesting because the job role has grown naturally towards the demand around the team performance, around the team travel, around the team facility. So actually anything what is happening around the team. So over the years, and I'm really happy that I can say that it's over 13 years now in elite football. And over these years, there was first of all a really big openness towards that topic, towards that field, towards that profession in a way. And I think we all know how massively nutrition has changed the last 10, 15 years. So now we have adverts on television about like eat healthier, make better choices, save the planet, all these bits. So and I think that's just like amazing to see how mindset is changing, how much more importance that complete topic gets, how much more interest people are having towards eating a bit healthier, whatever healthier might mean, because that's a really big word in that context. But also Corona has not helped in that context, but people want to have a better immune system, want to have more resistance towards like catching a flu, a cold, or this or that. Much more people are sitting in home offices where homeschooling is taking part, and there still should be like some lunch on, but the breakfast is not tidied away. So I think the current situation explains just like so easy why nutrition has such an amazing and big influence in our daily life. And especially around a football team, we're very, very blessed that we can work in that field as well, and also around these amazing colleagues and the amazing support of like our ownership, for example, like helping to create a complete department. Jurgen Klopp has given us massive support and belief and trust to fulfill all these like little jigsaws they are around the team, where we can fill in, where we can deliver support, where we can hopefully make a tiny bit of a difference.
And football's evolved massively. I mean, even just in my lifetime, it's been. I remember, professional footballers used to go out on a Friday night, not on a Friday night, obviously Saturday, but they'd go out on a weekend. They'd finish their game, they'd go out drinking. I always remember I grew up north, and we quite often go out in Newcastle, and on a Saturday night in Newcastle, you'd always see all the Newcastle players. They were all out partying, drinking, blah blah blah, and you see what's happening and again, I'm not sure whether I'm allowed to mention the United word, but Ronaldo, all of a sudden now all these players are looking at what he's doing and going, wow, he takes care of his nutrition, which to me it's alien to think of somebody who their entire career, their income, their longevity in a particular career, such as football, and football is such a short career span, really. It's a lifespan that and all of a sudden you've got these players who are lasting longer than theoretically they should, because they're looking after their nutrition. They're being healthier. And like you said a moment ago, is that healthy word, there's this misconstrued perception of what it means. But in performance, it's a massive thing, right? And you might just go health and people kind of brush it off. I mean, footballers 10 years ago were eating fast food, McDonald's, and it was just an energy demand thing, wasn't it? And do you still encounter this where, players are they just want to eat whatever? We actually lived opposite a professional footballer not so long ago, and the amount of Deliveroo drivers turning up at his job was mental. It was, it was a youngish lad, clearly probably didn't cook, and actually when he moved out, the landlord lived next door to him, and he actually said, the cooker in the kitchen was never used. It was never actually. So you're contending against all these things. So, you've came into this club, obviously with a pedigree from Bayern Munich, right? So you've came in, and how was that met by all these professional sportsmen who wanted to just do their own thing or whatever it might be? And you come in and starting talking about healthy food and colors of vegetables and things like this. And I just imagine them just going, nah, not so much. So how was it when you first sort of rolled in there? Or maybe at Bayern, right? How was it there? Because that was even longer, it was, how was it met by players, all of this conventional sort of nutrition stuff?
I think you have touched on that just before. So I think the mentality is changing massively. So when we look yesterday, the Ballon d'Or, when we look at these amazing elite footballers, so if we go through them, they have been nominated. They all have a very, very high perception on like, what can I do to make the difference? What can I do for prevention? What can I do to get another half a year, another year, another 2 years, another 3 years, another 4 years, 5 years. And funny enough, that has started probably like the last 5, 6, 7, 8 years ago. And these are role models where we can actually see that caring about your body makes a difference. And nutrition is the one thing, but also what all our colleagues are doing in the medical department, in the fitness department, in the rehab department, team operations, travel, anything, what can make you better, what can support your performance, what can support your performance levels. And the interesting bit is we probably can't break down what like the secret recipe is, because we deal with so many different individuals, different ethnicities, different age groups, different languages, different anything. So different upbringing, different education. So there is so much behind it. Where it's just like so excellent that we can focus on one specific thing, nutrition. And I think that's another word what is just so amazingly huge towards what is nutrition. So if you look at my job role, of course we feed the boys and hopefully the best we can. But all these bits in the background, what is happening towards body composition measurements, all the scientific data, we do microbiome investigations, like all this, like where you think like, oh my good God. So it's not only just the menu for a hotel where we all stay overnight together. So we have so many different types of fields. We're trying to touch on, and we try in a very holistic approach. And based on everything moves so quick in football. So we also have to move really quick towards our knowledge, how to gain more knowledge. Do we gain knowledge only towards reading books or attending university lessons or conferences? Or are we also like creating our own knowledge towards what we experience, what we see? Might not always be like evidence-based, but you still create a feeling. And I think feeling is a really big thing in nutrition as well. You need to have a feel for people as well, a feel for moods. So when you win a game, it's like the best, isn't it? It's just everyone is bouncing and it's superb. But what about if an unlucky injury is happening, or if the result is not good enough, or we're all affected towards different circumstances. So, and sometimes it's also that your family is just on another continent and you might need a little bit of like soul food to feel a little bit more happy. And that's probably also an amazing difference we can make, having a department, having a full-time position, and working for such a fantastic institution and organization like Liverpool Football Club.
I mean, you've very loosely touched on a huge amount there with respect to the consideration, and again, you talked about the ability to communicate and have people skills, right? Because I think one of the things that lacks in the world of nutrition and just coaching in general is that you can have all the skills, you can have all the science, you can have all the background, but ultimately, if you can't communicate this to people or almost acknowledge what they need, it becomes and you define it as that feel, right? Is that you need to know when a player's a little bit down because they're missing home or whatever it might be, or their family, and all of these things. And there's so many considerations. And I noted that so when you book, you mentioned about you take care of the chefs, the quality of produce, so sourcing produce. I mean, it's an enormous role, this, and I hope you're not doing it all on your own because it is enormous. I mean, all the stuff that you touch on, the menus, the daily menus, whether it's match day, whether it's the day before match day, whether it's recovery, whether you've got somebody who's injured, whether you've got somebody who wants some food that's kind of more I guess culturally suited to them. You've got all these different things that you've got to consider. I mean, it sounds like the most epic buffet that you could ever imagine. You've got everything possibly going, but there is such a huge management behind it. I mean, just a single person managing their own nutrition is a challenge, because you've got to think about how are they acquiring the food? How are they making the food? How are they preparing the food? How are they with time? Have they got to consider their evening meal has got to be with their family and their kids? You know, and you've got all these factors. So what does kind of a day in the life of you look like? You know, so when you're dealing with individuals, groups, whatever it might be, what does a day in your role as head of a nutrition look like?
So that's probably also like why this job is like so attractive for me as well, is because not one day is looking the same, except probably a match day, and that's only based on like pre-match, because that's always on a set time, and then there is a certain departure point. So that's probably the steadiness. What we have. But like when I started, it was simply more in a chef's role, like starting to travel with a football team and trying to make sure like food quality, that no one sits on the toilet or anything like that. So that was like how it all started. And nowadays it's a massive team effort, and I have an amazing and really big team behind me, and we are growing towards our demands, what is like fantastic to see, because it will be quite challenging to do that all on my own, and I definitely couldn't deliver that performance just on my own. So I have like amazing colleagues in the back. They are supporting our philosophy, and they're working like so hard to achieve every day like this amazing food and entertainment strategy around nutrition.
So how does it start? So you know, on a morning, so you're consulting with, so you're a chef as well, right?
Yes.
Right. So which I guess helps. It's, you know, you kind of get a good hold on, you know, what things are going to take and what a challenge they're going to be to make, or time wise, or whatever it might be. And I noted that you also said that you know, on occasions you'll do cooking lessons for the players or their players' wives, or you know, their partners, or whatever it might be, to factor in this home life, because obviously you don't have them 24/7, right? You know, they're not there. You're not waking them all up in a big dorm and going, here's a breakfast. You know, you've got to eat that. And you know, there is a lot of variety, and there's a lot of management outside of the time that you're probably with them, right? Because I'm guessing that, you know, they're at the training ground most days, right? And you've got control of kind of that situation. But then what happens when they leave?
So I think one of the big things is, and one of our approaches is that we try to deliver knowledge around product quality, what to do when, what is the product doing in your body, which benefits are there if you do this and this and this. And we start, so when you're an elite player, when you're a first team player, it's a tiny bit different than when you're in the academy.
Yep.
We have an amazing nutritionist, Tom, at the academy. And about 5 years ago, we have started a curriculum towards age groups where we have like at school. So when you're in year 3, these are the targets you have to learn through the year to go to year 4, for example.
Okay.
And so that's what we have started about 5 years ago. And we can see already like such an amazing difference to when we look at U18 players 5 years ago. They are probably in our first team.
So is that like an educational program that you talk about knowledge? So you're giving this foundation knowledge to the, because again, I mean, you know, people are involved with football from a very early age, right? And they might be in the academy at very, very young. So you're giving them this base knowledge to reinforce, I guess, you know, what comes later, right?
Yeah, and the kids are our main priority, but also like parents, house parents, our cooperating schools. So towards, if you look at the U9, U8, U11, these kids go to school the whole day, and then they might come from almost like all over the Northwest, I believe, and then they're sitting in a transfer for 90 minutes just for training, and then another 90 minutes back home. And then the day started probably 6:15, and then the day ends at 8:15. And in between was a lot of learning and teaching and everything. So for us, it's really important to support around that and to give like advice, to give ideas, what to do, how to structure the day around food, also our international academies. So, and that was also one of the reasons why we thought it would be so nice to create a book where we can actually empower and enable people to get a little bit of a taste what we are doing. And yeah, for us it's important to share, for us it's important to motivate as well. And we see us in that context also like a big role model. So we know that especially our first team players and also our academy players, they are making such amazing appearances. And the first team match days like Curtis, that's just like fantastic also for the city to see what football can do, what change we can make.
And just that sharing and all. I mean, there's always been this kind of, you know, in sports science and elite level sport, there's always been this kind of, you know, there's certain things we do in the background that we're not going to tell anybody about. And what you've done in your book is you've gone, look, this is kind of what we do. Obviously, there's a very interpersonal thing, and this is always the challenge with nutrition, isn't it? You know, I wrote a nutrition book 8 years ago, I think it was, and it was all about, again, application, but you know, it's this one size fits all scenario that people are looking for, aren't they? Every, you know, average person out there is sort of, you know, what do I do? Give me that blueprint of what you do. And I think, you know, when you pick up the book, you sort of realize that there's a very subtle sort of difference between different people. There's kids, there's adults, there's people at different levels of maturity, there's cultural differences, there's all of these variables that you talk about in the book, and all these things that you've been talking about today, and how do you take all those on board and how do you manage them? I think would probably be the word. It's management of somebody's nutrition, right? And you know, you've got academy players who are going, they're leaving the training ground, like you said, they've only got a short period of time with you, then they're going to school, and at school they've got peers around them, they've got all these people who, and if they're not a strong personality, I guess they're being, you know, they're sort of, we're going to McDonald's for lunch, you know, and you know, how do you manage that sort of thing where, and peer pressure, even in adults, right? We know this in adults. It's, you know, you get a couple of the players are a little bit rebellious, or whatever it might be. Even, you know, they're 19 or 20 years old in that kind of stage, and they just want to go and get KFC or whatever it might be. So how do you manage that? Do you base that on that foundation of knowledge and just go, if we educate these people enough, they'll make the right call and they'll make the right decision, rather than you going, you mustn't do this and you must do this, and you don't come across the sort of person who would be like, you cannot do this and you must. It seems a very kind of, we're gonna facilitate and empower these people to make their own call. All we're going to do is we're going to support it with the necessary tools, I guess is the way to put it. So is it kind of like that? Is there a real kind of struggle back there where you get certain players, you're like, oh my God, it's them again, and they're eating this, and we can't stop them having a beer, or, you know, whatever it might be, you know? So how does that, you know, do you get that challenge? Is this foundation that's been going on for 5 years, right?
So we have always handled it the same way, and it's like empowering people with knowledge to make decisions. And I think it's very important to leave a certain kind of responsibility to any individual in that context. So, and based on like this solid base of knowledge of education is there. So even if they would decide to stop at this specific restaurant with this golden M on, it will be all right. So it will be all right because they make the decision in that context, as long as they know what to do afterwards. So that this can't be like just a routine. And I think the interesting bit is they feel it. They feel a difference, and they will make this decision on a specific purpose. But like they won't go back there just like for the next meal. So, and sometimes it's I think we need to take this this naughty finger of nutrition, because I think that has happened for far too long. It's a tiny bit like the naughty sweet cupboard, where you say to kids, you are not allowed to open that one. You just turn around and what happens? The cupboard is empty.
Yeah.
And I think that's the important bit, what we need to do to make this topic attractive. So to go the other way around, instead of like telling off and whole grain and more vegetables and all these things, it's like open this topic up, make it interesting, make it tasty as well. So especially when we think about, we both have a solid knowledge around nutrition, I would say. But if you think you don't have really like big knowledge, or you're probably also too young to understand a lot, or you think like, oh my God, I'm told to do this and this and that. The best way to teach around nutrition is, because it's appealing, it's tasty, and it's like creating a certain kind of trust towards what you can find on the buffet. We can't just like pray different things and then it's not on the buffet, for example. So there are a lot of like little bits where we have super great tools to make it just so approachable, make it so just easy. So and for me it was always very, very important to not just provide consulting duties from like on a Thursday from 2 till 4. So for us, nutrition consulting happens on the corridor, on the way up to the airplane. So it's not that you book in for a consultation. It happens in between, when the question is just there, when you walk past the office. And that makes it so nice and easy, because it's not just like this theoretical process where you open your folder and then you see date of birth and all these things. So for us, it's a very interactive progress, and the buffet and the dining room helps massively just to provide this solid trust of like what is available.
Yeah, and also it's that, you know, that you mentioned there about kind of how stuff tastes and how it's prepared and all those different things. And I think people have this perception, don't they, of what a nutritionist is going to do to them. Is you're gonna sit down, you're gonna tell them all of you're gonna sit down, you're gonna tell them your age, your weight, your height, your all these rudimental things, and then they're gonna write on a piece of paper, you know, what you're gonna eat at specific times and in what quantities and blah blah blah. And it's this boring. You know, we have this ongoing joke about the chicken and broccoli scenario, right? It's going to be a piece of steamed chicken and a piece of broccoli, right? Which is possibly the most horrendous meal in the world. But if you can make the chicken tasty and you can make the broccoli tasty, and then you add a bunch of other stuff to it, all of a sudden it starts to become appealing, right? You know, and it's that challenge. And I think there is that perception that you've just sort of mentioned about, you know, when you consult with players, I think, you know, if it's the general public, they want this, I want you to write a list of what I've got to eat. And in reality, we know that that's only going to last as long as the list isn't boring, right? You know, which is what people get bored in a week, right? You know, so that variety, and I notice in a lot of the stuff that you've written and a lot of the stuff that you mentioned about this, having this variety. So do you prepare that menu yourself, or is that something that you work with the chefs at and you go, look, we've got this amount of vegetables, this amount of protein, this amount of fats, and I want you to put them all together. Do you help with the construction of those things, or is that something that you liberally leave to the chefs, or are you part of that process?
It's a massive team approach towards things. So I have simply decided that we don't live in a 7-day week. We live almost like in a 4 days week, because we live in like match day -2, match day -1, match day +1, and then we start again. So, and therefore we have different requirements around how we tailor the menus towards like refueling, recoveries, and all these things. So it's a massive team approach for us. I know, and it's not only the menu itself, it's like normally we have like the topic of the week, either it's like a fruit or a specific vegetable. And we run that all over our dining room. So the first team won, the U23s won, plus the academy. So for example, it's pomegranate or something like that. And
how does that look? So you're saying you run this knowledge. How does this look? Is it like signs everywhere? Do people get little cards with? How does it work?
So there are little stations around, and then we try to integrate these things in our menu plannings as well. And for example, pomegranate is a very wintry thing, isn't it? And then we have like, sometimes it's on the TV, there are like little things going on the TV in the dining room, or there's like a little station. So now and again, there's like all the different varieties of sugar. So when you have like your molasse and the dark ones and the cane one, and the different types of honeys and agaves and everything, what you can get around. And that's super interesting because players and stuff, they're stopping. So we are also trying to educate our staff, that they can tell stories. So, and it's almost like when you go shopping and someone wants to promote something and you stop because it sounds interesting, because it just, and that's what we're trying to do, to just when you walk past, to just pick up a tiny bit of knowledge, a tiny bit of information, a tiny bit of like, that's interesting, I didn't know that. And using these things as well to actually present. So for example, how much sugar is in this? How much sugar is in that? What might be a better choice? Is honey really the better choice for you? So just going a bit into that. So widening up the horizon around, horizon you call it here, isn't it? And that plays a massive role for us, to have this interactive approach, to make the dining room not only like a canteen, if that makes sense. So like for us, it's a playground.
It's an interactive learning experience. It sounds like something you go to at the Science Museum. and what fascinates me about this is that this would be, in my view, and this maybe is where your background lies with dealing with kids, right? This is almost what, in my head, I would perceive the ideal scenario in schools or in any facility that is looking at feeding kids, because I much like you, I'm sure we probably concur on this, in that it's this lack of knowledge. We're three or four generations behind now in the people used to home cook food, everybody used to deal with produce and blah blah blah. Then all of a sudden it's just not all of a sudden, it's sort of slowly filtered away to now more processed stuff and blah blah blah, and people want convenience, and it's kind of gone full circle a little bit now, in that you can go into a supermarket and you can buy relatively fresh ingredients that have been put together in this almost like TV dinner scenario that you used to have, where it was all processed and would last 12 months. But then you've got these generations that you're dealing with, players that are coming through at 20 or whatever it might be. Their parents didn't know anything about nutrition, and they were probably that part of that generation that was processed foods and fried foods and, whatever, just eat whatever you can and go on a fad diet, 12 months a year. And then before that. So how do people embrace this? Are the players stopping at these stations and stuff? Because these are big characters, right? I'm guessing, they're big characters. They're people who are very in charge of what they do. And then they've got this little station that explains about pomegranates, for example. Are they very conducive to it? Do they take all this in? And do you ever ask them questions and go, so we taught you last week? You stop them on the plane stairs and go, so which is the best sugar for refueling?
You still remember?
How does it, I just find it intriguing. I'd love to see what that dynamic looked like, because these are people who are, and especially kind of older players will be like, I don't want to embrace this. But like you've said, you've been doing this for 5 years, right? With the educational stuff, and even longer as a practitioner. So it's that, it's taken them a long time, maybe, but they now embrace it and they go, oh, this part of our world, this is what we do.
We have an amazing atmosphere at the training ground. So, and that is actually mind-blowing, because from an outside point of view, it might appear that it's like looking up to this like amazing elite footballers, but we have a very, very humble and a very easy way to deal, very respectful, but I would probably declare it as like a really quite flat hierarchy, if that makes sense. So and that makes it even easier for us, like to have such an interactive approach, to such just like easy conversations. And we spend more time together than we actually do with our families, based on like the travel, the overnight stays in hotels, and just simply about the fixture calendar. And we know so much about each other. So therefore it's not even like hard. It's just like, so this easy conversations, they ongoing, like, oh, is that interesting? And it is as normal as in every group. There will be people that are a tiny bit more interested, and there are people that are just interested. Let's say like that. But based on that, we try to have a lot of repetitions in it. So if we do, or if it's about turmeric or about ginger or about hydration, about anything, so to play it through these days, that it actually, that's my experience. So when you have this repetitions around, you find it here, you find it there, I've heard about this, look, it's on the TV as well, it just sticks easier in your mind. I think that's very, very important. So if it's just a one-off and you would have a little leaflet there, it would probably not get the attention. But because it's like a weekly thing, it's just simply there. We also have our monthly newsletter, what is going out to all the parents and also to all our colleagues in Chapel Street and in Anfield. So we try and mobilize information around nutrition, performance, healthy lifestyle. Sometimes it's also the food trend, what might be around. Vitamin D, big thing at the moment, isn't it? Getting dark. So little reminders, they can help to support, because at the end, we all perform. So this performance nutrition, it's that interesting because it's so related to elite sports, isn't it? But at the end, we all go to work. Parents raising kids, we exercise, big day at work, we are doing just a podcast. So performance happens everywhere. So, and everyone needs fuel.
That's pretty much, you stated that like we'd stated it. I mean, we talk, Human 24, we talk about performance. We talk about this big performance narrative, is that everything is performance, right? Spending time with the kids, performance. We talk about brain waves. We talk about light exposure. We talk about, sleep patterns. We talk about nutrition, obviously. And all of this is this performance, right? And it's this performance narrative that you have, and that embracing of an individual to go, everything is about performance. Therefore, my nutrition, which I do all the time, has got to play this massive role. And I think, my biggest question out of all of this is this: how do you get people who almost push back against it? But by the sound of it, you've covered that with a culture. You've created this incredible culture, and you said about the hierarchy in the place, and everybody seems to have this respect for everybody's significant role. So you've got, somebody can ask you a question, they can ask the chef a question, they can ask whoever a question, and ultimately most people have probably got the answers because you've educated them to that extent. I mean, it really is a fascinating approach, and it's something which isn't just, like you say, it isn't just elite sport. It's everything, right? It's, the average person out there needs that education in the same way. They're just maybe not in a enclosed environment like you are with the players, where you're spending so much time together that everything just falls into this synergistic way of working, which is incredible. So based off that, so nutritional priorities, what are the things that you prioritize with players, with elite sports? And I'm guessing you're probably going to then say it's the exact same for everybody else, but it, is there a kind of nutritional priority? So we'll go back to those sort of rudimentary and those basics that people are always questioning, right? People are always questioning about carbs. People are always questioning about protein, fats, what's good, what's bad, what's ugly, and how do you approach that with with the team, with the players, with individuals, with everybody? You know, how do you approach that? Do you give them a certain amount of protein they need to hit? Is there a certain amount of carbs? And you talked about that 4-day week where obviously there's post-match day. So if we're talking about somebody who's performing, so our community, let's say somebody does a triathlon on a Friday, you know, what does their Saturday look like? What's the refueling? What's the, you know, inflammation, the recovery, the stuff that you're working with the physios when you got somebody who's injured? What are the things that kind of stack up or change in that dynamic?
So first, it's massively important to actually understand and read the player. So first of all, so that's why body composition measurement, bone density, all these things play into that. So that gives us a theoretical understanding, then player's position, all these things. Then there are like all these modern world data collection processes around GPS and acceleration, deceleration, heart rates, all these bits. So, and theoretically, these data helping us that we could calculate exactly what needs to go on the plate. But it's not that easy just to calculate. And they're all like these amazing papers around. They have like kilogram body weight per this, per that. And you have like your average evidence around carbs and protein and fat and this and that. And that gives us a really, really good guidance towards things. And then we have our nutritional approach towards hydration, food, and eventually supplements. So our philosophy is mainly based on like food first philosophy. So for us, food, product quality, all these bits, that's why it's so important for us to make food interesting, because you can have like an amazing buffet set if no one walks into the dining room and they might stop on the way home somewhere, then there is a little mistake.
And that's something you got to massively prevent, I'm guessing, right? Is that you know, that you've trained your ass for 90 minutes on the field, and you walk in the buffet and you've got, you know, all this shriveled up vegetables and lettuce leaves that are covered in, you know, brown bits, and you picture it, right? It was always, you know, the worst looking stuff was the stuff you should be eating, you know, and then everybody goes for all the brown stuff, you know, and I'm talking kids school buffets here, but it, you know, you don't want them to walk in there and have all this wonderful food to then go, right, I'm just going to stop at McDonald's on my way home. You don't want them to do that, right? So to prevent that, you've got to, that's got to be palatable. It's got to be flavorsome. It's got to be tasty. It's got to be all those things, right?
Yeah. So that's our field. Then we have to perform on that. So that's where so that's how wide performance can go in that context. So that's our performance, what we need to deliver, and we also need to deliver it in that certain way that it's the same. You move house and there's a pizza place on the corner, and you walk in, order your food, and it's either like, wow, nice. Oh, that's cool that we have like such a great space, just like in walking distance. I would say, thanks. That was a nice experience, but probably not for me. And that's the thing, especially with food. So you can't just miss it too often, if that makes sense. So it needs to be right. It needs to be right in a consistency as well. And especially when we have, and our season is planned on like this quick turnaround, let's say it like that. So therefore, good planning, the right philosophy, creativity, innovation, always something new, inspiring, motivating. So all these things, they all go together in just like filling a plate. If that makes sense. And yeah, so therefore for us, so we calculate a lot of databases and softwares and all these bits, they're helping us. But then obviously the performance in the dining room, front of house, also like so important. Having this, we have our two wonderful girls in there, Caroline and Carol, and they are just like giving it such a heart. They are like the center of the training ground in a way, and they're just amazing, because they are almost like it feels like a family with them. And yeah, and that's just like so beautiful. to see, because if someone is there and said, all right, love, how are you today? Or asking about the kids, just like the normal things. Yeah, and that gives it such a hearty feel as well. And that plays into our philosophy also quite a lot. So having this family approach, feeling so close together, sharing almost everything. And especially when you know each other so well, you can hardly hide anything. And sometimes you want to talk, sometimes you don't want to talk, but at least you know you're always in a safe environment. It's always trusted, it's always confidential, it's always private as well. And yeah, I'm sure we would love to open up the training ground sometimes more often, just to actually give people a chance. But we need this little homey feel. We need this private space, this confidential space where we can prepare for performance and also perform in training and around match day recovery and anything that needs to be done to be ready.
So what kind of metrics are you playing with here? So you said about data. So data collection, things like body composition, you got the GPS stuff, so you know what kind of mileage people are hitting and, how many times they've sprinted, et cetera, et cetera. I mean, some of this data is incredible. And then you've got, things like heart rate variability, you've got rough estimates of probably caloric output and input and et cetera, et cetera. So which ones are these kind of key metrics? We have a big audience that will probably be embracing a lot of technology and they'll be using a lot of this data themselves, and they'll be very much into, so what are the metrics and how does that manipulate what you then do with them? Hydration status, you talked about microbiota, you're measuring that. Is that a routine thing? Is that every 4 weeks? Is that every 6 weeks? Saliva testing, blood testing, what are the key ones there that you're utilizing?
So for us, it all goes in a cooperation. So if you speak about GPS data, they play a role in our approaches, but they are sports science based. So we work really close with the fitness department, and also like bloods, for example, that's the medical department. So in case we are, and that's also like wonderful to see how close we are approaching things in like such a collegial way, how we collaborate together, how close all the departments are connected, how we share data, how we share information. And like our big thing is like body composition every 8-10 weeks at the moment.
How do you measure composition? What tools are you using for that?
So there are various ways around. We are using, it's called an ultrasound technique. That's quite a while on the market, but 2016, the Olympic Committee, there was like a specific body composition working committee. They have updated the version, and that's for us like the benchmark to measure body composition. And but that plays a massive role also like for the physios, for example. So sharing these data. Yep. So if you have a player with an injury, you measure probably more often just to keep on top of like body composition recovery processes, making sure the body weight is also fine. Also, is there like a change of the circumference of the specific injured part? So there are a lot of things where we need data as a reference, but also data in like for future planning. And at the end, it's always return to play. It's or prepare to play. Yeah. So that's always our main target.
Okay, so players with nutritional challenges, should we say? So things like an inability to prepare their own food, because once they leave the training ground, it's all down to them, right? So how does that, how do you manage that? How do you look at that? Because this is like people who work 9 to 5, right? They go into the city, you can kind of control where they're going to go to eat, because there'll be a certain place they go at lunchtime, so you then go, right, these are the best choices you can get from there. There's a pattern, there's a behavior, right? And obviously you said about match days are very regimented, right? You know exactly what, I always remember there was a famous rugby player said he'd always have a bacon roll. It was a bizarre one. He'd always eat like 2 bacon rolls, I think it was, about 3 hours, and this is a lot of years ago, about 3 hours before a game, because it would force him to drink and he'd hydrate. So it was an interesting concept. But anyways, we divulged. But how do you manage this stuff outside of outside of that performance window that you've got them. So when they leave the training ground, or when somebody leaves work, hypothetically, you know, and they need to go home, they need to prep their own food, they need to do all that sort of stuff. So how do you support that as a you know, as the head of nutrition?
So when COVID hit, one of our first thing was like, what can we do to keep the family safe, to avoid going to the supermarket, but still like keeping their body composition, body weight, all these things right, because no one knew how long this will take.
Yeah.
And so more or less overnight, we have established a delivery service. And in the very beginning, I had like Excel sheets on my kitchen table at home, coordinating like delivery times. And
so
like,
you did this all internally. So the delivery was done by, you set up, it wasn't like, oh, we've recruited a delivery company. You actually did it yourself? Okay.
Yeah. So the first couple of weeks were a bit wild, because like every day we send out just simply a Word document on like one of our communication platforms. And then now and again, the orders dropped in, and then orders were changed. And then some players sort of forgot actually to drop the order in time. So you're chasing them, because, you know, they order every day, so they need the food. And but then we established quite quickly like an app, so to order digitally, and then that helped massively, because our kitchen table was available again. But so that's still available. So we're still having our wonderful delivery service, but we also have we call it the overnight fridge.
Yeah.
So when you're on your way out, you could actually choose like a little snack. So it always depends when you train, because when you train at 11, for example, then lunch is provided, but you might live alone, so you might be really happy taking a couple of fruits, or like a snack, or probably just something to heat up for the evening out of the overnight fridge. While when we train at 4, so there's lunch, snack, dinner available anyway, so then you're probably almost sorted towards that. So these are the two main approaches, but also in our education process, we have like shopping trips, especially with younger players. So we have a lot of transition players. They're moving out of the house parents, or they're selected to train with us, and they are just moving into an apartment on their own. But also we have a lot of players on loan. They sometimes live then for 3-6 months in a hotel room based on the circumstances. So these are our key targets to actually improve like their skill set around shopping, knowing how to make a quick breakfast, an overnight pot with oats and all these things. So, and also what are you doing when you're in a hotel room? So what are easy and quick things you can do without needing like a massive full equipped kitchen?
Yeah. So these overnight things, these that ready prepared meals that the chefs put together and go, look, you just grab one on your way out if you want one, with a variety of, you know, it's almost like leaving Marks and Spencer's with a, you know, you've got the big counter with all the array of things, but obviously the precision balanced, and they've got everything that you want in them and what the players need and things like this. So it's a fascinating, I mean, to do that yourself is a big, and develop an app and blah, blah, blah. That's shifting, that's moving, because it's, you know, these things are logistically, it's logistics, right? It's a challenge to get this. And how many players are in the squad? So how many people are you managing at any one point here?
So our squad, so match day squad, is normally between 21 and 23. So, but that's probably down to specific football regulations, I believe. But normally we probably have around, on a pre-season, we have probably around 35, something like that. But there is a lot of development players in there as well. But they are also massively important for us, because for them it's all nervous, it's all new, playing with the big boys and all these bits. So in that context, it's very, very important for us to take care of them as well. Also, like observing a tiny bit, are they nervous? Are they not hungry because of being nervous, or a bit shy, or all these things? So that's that's really, really important for us. But normally, around 35 players, and then I think probably a couple of more member of staff.
Of course, because you've also got the staff, right? I guess your staff alone, there's going to be quite a few, right? You know, so there's everybody that you feed, and you're not just feeding, I guess, the 20 odd squad players and the 30 odd that come to the training ground. Then you've got the academy, you've got all these. You know, it's a massive operation.
It's a massive operation, and it would not be possible without like this massive team approach and the help of Anfield as well, of Paul and Steve and Phil and all these like fantastic guys. They are always there and always supportive. And Tim, the head chef in Anfield, is also like a massive support for us, because we can sometimes share like bulk deliveries if it's like a specific product. And at the moment, it's not so easy to bring things into the country based on like Brexit situation. So logistically, sometimes we need to be clever around things, but as a team, we always get it sorted.
Always get it figured out.
Yeah,
no, it's an enormous field. Is there like almost like a player specific demand where you get, and again, I don't want to talk about specific players, but is there, obviously you've got individuals, right? So you've got individuals that like particular types of cuisine and things like this. And do you accommodate that? So if you've got somebody who goes, look, I like this particular type of food or this particular type of food, is there that level of options in there for players?
So from a food perspective, there is only that much what you can do. So if you take a potato, we can mash the potato, we can fry it, we can bake it, we can boil it. So from a natural point of view, there is a restriction towards things. And then we put our performance nutrition things in there. So like the cream thing and the fat and the deep fry and all these bits. So therefore, for us, it's so important to go all around the globe, all around the world, and bring like different varieties of food in. So if it's like a Thai based touch, or sometimes like more Chinese thing, and I don't mean like the normal Chinese, what you probably would get here at the Chippies. So and that helps us massively to keep it so interesting. So even also like the Brazilian touch or the Portuguese touch of things. So if you break it down, the culinary world is like endless. And if we put these things together with our limitations towards, like when we look at pasta, there's pasta, tortellini, gnocchi, and then there's probably a couple of different types of pasta versions around. But that's it. Rice. Well, we have different types of rice. There's a risotto rice, there's a borrio, there's this, so finding this combination helps us so much to keep it interesting. And also the presentation. So sometimes a thing in a bamboo basket can look so amazing and appealing, isn't it? And we deal with a clientele. Our boys, our players, they can afford anything if they want it. So, and therefore, I think that plays also massively into, we need to keep on top of that. We need to stay interesting in our approaches, bringing always like a couple of new things, and just to not get bored, just to not get too much of a routine. And therefore going all around the world and looking at all these different produce and innovations and everything what is out there, that helps us massively to do what we do day in, day out.
And I guess that's the joy of football in many respects, right? It's a multitude of cultures now all brought together under one roof. Whereas English football, probably 20 years ago, you'd have the majority of players were probably from the UK, and they were probably quite happy with fish and chips and roast beef dinners on a Sunday. So sorry, I'm largely stereotyping there, pies and things like this, but I guess it's the whole sort of overlying thing here, and again, it's stuff that you touch on in your book, which we'll talk about in a second, is this whole variety. And again, I sometimes hate sort of mention these things because then people go, well, yeah, but what is variety and how do we do about it? But the fact is that you're looking at performance here. And one of the big things that you kind of mentioned is the fact that you look at produce from around the world. You're wide open to, we can source food in its, iterations. And I think you summarized, some stuff really well there in that, there's only so many things you can do to a potato. And then you've got the variety of potatoes that are out there. You've got starches, you've got, rice. There's only so many variants. There's pasta. There's only so many variants. But you can do these interesting things that make them look palatable. And also the presentation you mentioned there, which I think is a massive thing, right? You can make something that's relatively boring look actually quite interesting. I mean, they've been doing it for years with chicken, right? They take a bog standard chicken breast and put some sear marks in it. And people are like, oh, that looks tasty. And, rather than just a piece of boiled chicken, they put some sear marks in it. It doesn't change the flavor whatsoever. It's just, it looks more presentable, right? And they've been doing it with produce, for years. They do things to produce to make it look more palatable and more interesting, don't they? They present it in different ways and all these different things. So, I mean, it's an incredible kind of a holistic approach, and the dynamic and the logistics of what you're dealing with there is fascinating, because it's a big operation, right? And you've got to do so much there. So let's just touch on your book, because it's an interesting read. Let me just grab it, because I think it's the first nutrition book I've ever read by a head of nutrition at a football club. In fact, it might be the only book out there. Is it?
I believe so.
I don't think and I've read a good amount of nutrition books. I don't think I've ever read one by a head of nutrition at a sports franchise, club, whatever it might be. And normally you would have expected these from, the US or whatever it might be in American football, or, something like this, where sports science and obviously nutrition and things like this have been apparently taken a lot more seriously than they have. I think European football is actually overtaking a lot of these. It was, back in my day, there was about 2 sports scientists at 2 clubs, I think, when I first graduated. The job opportunities were non-existent. It was so it relatively new. So a taste of the Liverpool way, recipe for success. This is the first time I've ever held up a book like I'm promoting it. Because I am promoting it, because it's a great read, and it's a fairly epic read as well. I'm about 3/4 of the way through it. I'll be honest, I haven't finished it. But, and on the front, you've got that quote that I mentioned before, where Jurgen Klopp has said, you're one of his most important signings, which is a hell of a statement. You look at the Ballon d'Or was last night. You've got all these incredible signings that a club such as Liverpool, and it has the pedigree of Liverpool, have had. And he mentions that head of nutrition yourself is one of his most important signings. And I mean, that must be incredible for you, and also for the players to sort of look at you and go, wow, this is somebody who's hugely respected. And I guess that kind of carries over into, they listen to you, right? Which is a hugely important part, right? So tell me about the book. Where did this start? How did you start thinking, I'm going to write a book about this?
It's an amazing story, because it was my first pre-season in 2016, and we traveled to the west coast of America. And it was like a couple of days in the camp, and I was brand new there. And then now I've really settled, and it's like wonderful. But like when you change from one club to the other, and you move country as well, and then you're only here for 2-3 days, and then you fly directly to the US, and like finding your way in the operation and trying to make a statement already around let the buffet speak. And so there was one of these wonderful evenings. Normally we meet after all our shifts when we have finished, just for a little update, to bring everyone up to speed. Where are we up to? Is there anything for tomorrow? What needs to be organized? All these things. And there was this unique and amazing group of like Jurgen sitting there, our owners, one of our owners, Meg Owen, was sitting there, Billy Hogan sitting there, a really unique and powerful group of wonderful people. And they've invited me and said, Mona, tell us how you're doing, how's it going? And we just had like such an amazing communication, amazing chat around things. And there was so much good energy around. There was around nutrition, what can we do? And then this book thing popped up, and we all just said, let's write a book. Would that not be amazing to write a book? So, and about 4.5 years, 5 years later, the book is there. And so there was an idea. The idea was parked in the drawer till like last year in February. And then we put the idea back out, and we started working together. Yeah, there were lovely people involved, like the publisher, Reach Sport, fantastic. I had weekly calls with Dave, who was supporting in the writing process, and there was such a good energy around. So that book just came so quick and naturally. Our German agent, who has helped towards getting like all the legal and contract sites and all these bits ready with our colleagues here at LFC, and it was so effortless, and it was so enjoyable to do it. And also we are really, really proud to communicate and publish information, what we want to share. And when we started to think about the details of the book, we always said, this book should be for kids and fans. And the idea behind this, because it should be for every age group. Everyone should feel empowered. And that's why we try to make it so colorful and so many infographics, so that even like a good night story from dad to son, or mom and daughter, or whatever. So, and it should deliver like lovely information, what is not like, so you don't and you shouldn't, and this is not okay. And so it's more like this positivity, and like, oh, let's just do it.
And I mean, it's such an influential position to be in, right? Is that you know what? Again, you know, you'll know better than I do, but average number of fans that attend a game, what is it like? You know, how many?
At the moment we have 54,000 in the stadium.
4,000, right, in the stadium, and then you've got, you know, millions elsewhere, right? And you're in such an influential position as a club to put out information, or to put out knowledge. And I don't think I've seen a club do this before, where it's, you know, they've gone, right, we're going to tell you what happens kind of behind the scenes, and we're going to do that in a way that you know, like you said, kids are going to be interested, parents are going to be interested, families are going to be interested. There's going to be a lot of people with, you know, young kids who are very good footballers, who are going to be like, oh, hold on, you know, we probably need to take this on board and start to think about this now. And it's that thing that you said about that carried over from 5 years of educating, and that starts to slowly filter through, and you start to get that. There is no question mark over anything. It's just, this is the way we do it. This is the culture that we've created, and culture takes a long time. And I guess you came into Liverpool with, there wasn't a nutritional culture, or was there? I don't know. You know, was there a bit of a nutritional culture when you got there?
Oh, there was definitely. And it was fascinating to see how much good knowledge was there already. So it was not the point that we started completely from scratch. But what helped a lot is like that it was not a thing where you think, oh, nutrition, what are we doing now? So there was a massive interest. There was a massive demand on like support, questions, also like getting things right. So for example, as we touched on before, hydration. So that was also a thing for us in the book. So all the chapters we are touching on, and they are based on an experience what we have gained. So we know how important hydration is. So if we are not hydrated enough, our performance levels will just go down, headaches, and feel a little bit tired, and all these things. So, and that's the same for everyone. For a child goes to school, child going to football training. For us, traveling to work, being on the tube, whatever. And it's so important for us to provide just this lovely ideas and tips and tricks behind what you can do. So how you can flavor your water naturally without any additional calories and sugars and all these things. So to empower people just to be creative around nutrition, but also just said before, to provide all this variety of foods and all these things, but sustainability still plays a massive role. So foods from all over the world is so important for us, but we also trying to touch really on like regional products, seasonal products, just around the Northwest, like little suppliers, buy local as much as we can, home growing, our allotment, our LFC allotment.
There's an LFC allotment.
Yeah, there is.
Amazing.
There is. So Corona was not super helpful, based that no one could really go there and work there. But the years before, there are amazing pictures in the book where like our academy players are going there for life skills. So in that they don't only have like this nutritional education, they have also proper life skill education, change in tire or things. So what do you need to learn in life? And so sometimes just dig in some beds around in the allotment, just not to make them hard work, but just for a life skill setting, and then harvesting some crops and then putting like the barbecue on and just grilling some vegetables there. And so these are all that makes us so happy, and also sharing our happiness around exactly these bits and empowering people. So not everyone will have an allotment or a big garden, but everyone has a windowsill, so little types of cress and all these things, and that's what we're trying to do. Or even just a couple of herbs, so fresh herbs for seasoning to avoid too much salt and like all these pre-made spice mixtures. So that's what we're trying to communicate, and also to look after our planet in that context, and review carefully how things are coming on your plate.
It's a surprising read, I think, would be the way that I would. An unexpected read, I think, would be the best descriptor, because your overview of it there, it's not what you expect. I kind of expected, I thought, right, this is going to be the regimen of what a professional club does with their players. There'll be a couple of recipes thrown in there, and this, and you kind of expect that, which was kind of wrong with me, but obviously we've only just met, and you expect that almost hardcore nutritional approach of, this is what you can eat, this is what you can't eat, this is what you must eat, this is what you mustn't eat. And I think, you and me both have, we've done this long enough to realize that approach just doesn't work, and probably never will. Well, no, there's no probable, it never will. And then there's also the aspect of talking about produce, talking about regional, and talking about supporting, and I think coronavirus has kind of pinpointed that as to, local produce is a big thing. And especially, coming from the north, it was, there's a lot of farms about, there's a lot of farmers, a lot of people, creating great produce, butchers, et cetera. So it's, it is a really good read. I will get it finished, but it is quite comprehensive. It wasn't what I expected it to be, about half that size when it came with the post. I was like, that's actually quite a large book, but it's a great read, and we'll put in the links as to where people can grab that. But it's available pretty much everywhere, isn't it? And how are book sales going? Have you had a big uptake?
Yeah, it's going really, really well. And there's going to be another signing session on the 17th of December, okay, in our Liverpool shop, in our fan shop at the Liverpool One. And I think what is also very, very amazing to see is that people expect a different book or different content in the book.
I think they will, yeah.
So most of the people are expecting a cookbook, but it's not. It's something completely different. It's a storytelling book about nutrition with a lot of input of our wonderful players, food around all the globe, combining theory, practical approaches, a tiny bit of science, but easy to understand, easy to digest, and probably just a perfect Christmas present.
Yeah. So 17th of December, Liverpool Club Shop.
Yes.
Liverpool Club Shop. So you'll be there doing a signing and probably answering lots of questions about sugars.
Yeah, not a problem.
So, hey, I mean, we could go on forever. I mean, there's so many topics we could go down, and I'd actually love to dig into the science and the background and everything else. But obviously, there's a million rabbit holes there that we could talk about. But I know you've got a very busy schedule, so I just want to say thank you very much for taking the time to speak to us. It's been wonderful to get the insight and understanding of what you do there, because it's an incredible role.
Phil, my pleasure. Absolutely amazing to meet you. Wonderful 75 minutes. Hope to meet you in person really, really soon.
Yeah, no, it'd be super cool. Well, thank you so much.
Thank you.
We'll say goodbye for now. And thanks once again for coming on the podcast.
Thank you so much for having me. Have a lovely day.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.